Welcome to Burning Metal. This is your humble host and Forge Master, Gmetal. I originally had a whole different setup for this episode. This episode was supposed to be about creativity and meaningfulness, and then Batman died. Let's start the Forge! What's up, guys? Now, Gmetal is here to tell you what happened on August 10th. I'm recording this mid-around, I started off at August 11th. Now I'm at August 12th in the middle of the night shooting this video because it is crazy of what madness has happened in the DC brand. The DC brand has literally cut down to thirds. They're going down a hole of new territory. They're bringing the comic book industry into a new era. But in doing so, you pretty much go Batman. And yeah, that's a term of phrase, but let me explain what that means in reality. The comic book industry has been in decline for quite a bit, for many practices that don't always work out. People hire bad writers that they like, or for a while they've been hiring writers just for the fact that they want to push a political agenda or things of that nature. So this Forge is going to be very hot. This Forge is not going to be one of those clean-cut Forges that you can just get behind. This is going to be one of those bumpy rides that you're just going to have to just deal with and hit the bumps. This is going to be one of those crazy times. And DC just did a major step forward for the comic book industry, but also a step back for the comic book industry, in my opinion. This is crazy, people. There was just too much in this. I'm almost speechless when it comes to this, because at first my gut reaction was anger because of the negative implications. Then thinking more and more into it, there was positive implications, where the comic book industry does survive in a different format. So guys, this is the second Forge of Burning Metal, and I'm just happy that you guys are all here. And I want to say this now, because before I get into all the crazy stuff, anyone who listened to my first podcast will know I love comic books. That's the title of the first podcast. But I got into the nitty-gritty details of what that meant for me. And now it's a bittersweet taste to see that era is now ending in such a quick manner that DC just said it's ending and this is what's happening now. So guys, roll with me here. I want to give you some information about what's happening in the comic book industry and how this probably will affect the way you view superheroes in the future, and what this means for other people as well. Cooling Blade. Quality is the key word for this section. See, quality, I think, is what is pushing this new revolution of how this industry is going to change, not just because DC, but other companies have been following suit with this method for a while now. They've just been doing it a little bit slower, a little bit more on a cadence, where DC just busted out and did it. It's kind of crazy, right? But the quality, I think it's an important factor in this whole scenario, right? So I will talk about the quality of this situation. The good side of quality that can come from this is definitely gonna be the focus on the top tier characters. The top tier characters will get the exact focus they deserve. For years, DC Comics have been doing great with Batman, and pretty much anything Batman oriented, because they put the top writers there. And they expect quality and everything coming from Batman. Not every book that comes from there is great, but a good portion of them are. But all that being said, it's just a crazy amount of time that you're just going to be not focusing on anyone else. And you can have now more time to focus on a better Superman comic, a better Wonder Woman comic, a better just overall comic. Like, it's going to be great and stuff. So, in that sense, we'll have better Wonder Woman, better Superman, better Flash. Whatever heroes they decide to focus on, we will have better characters. Now, we can think about other bad problems that can come from this kind of storytelling. So I said the good side, let me tell you the bad side that could potentially come from it. Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, all these characters are great characters. I really do like these characters, but my favorite comics aren't their comics half the time. My favorite comics are the side characters. Right now, I am currently reading Red Hood and the Outlaws, and I've been following that book religiously since it started a couple years back. That kind of book can't exist in a less declined DC comic book atmosphere. They're just going to now focus on the things that make movies and TV and video games. Whereas characters that just would normally survive in the comic books won't exist as much because they need some kind of other media form to exist. And truly, one of the worst possible things that can happen from this is that there is no longer a writer with a long-form storytelling process for a certain character. What we would end up having is a lot of short stories of these characters where we won't have any development on them anymore in comparison to what we would have had if the traditional sense would have happened. So we have 100 issues of Batman that fleshes out his character, his persona, everything about him. Like, Batman is cool and we all like him, for the most part, right? Or Superman, or Wonder Woman, or Flash. One of my favorites, Red Hood. He got fleshed out throughout this entire thing. It's great. Now, let us take this back to what could potentially happen now. What could potentially happen is that now, since these comic books aren't being as much of a focus, they might try to use it for promotional gear, right? Promotion, something like Hollywood stuff, where now Hollywood writers get to write these characters, and they won't see the value in a long-term storytelling feature. They'll just look at it as, this character has this kind of power, this character has that kind of personality, so let's show them with that personality, and they're not going to put a lot of effort and thought into it because they're not a main character. We would lose long-term storytelling features. And some of these characters will lose their ability to become greater characters. Time to grind. Now that we're in the opinion section, okay? Grinding is just this opinion part for me, you know what I'm saying? So, what would make this super metal if I said everything positive and great, but my opinion here still is somewhat negative towards this scenario, because creative control is up in the air with these characters now. No longer can we just say that we have comics and then we have movie versions and then video game versions. No, what we're really saying here is these characters are really losing the comic versions, and the only existing version of these characters that will exist for a while will be their movie counterparts, their TV counterparts. And these comic book characters do not thrive wholeheartedly on these platforms because of the perception of superheroes being childish or dumb or not meant for adults or so on and so forth. Where comic books allows this medium to grow in certain ways that you can't do it on these other ones. Creative control here is one of the biggest issues that I'm going to have to find here. Like, it grinds my gears all the time that these issues are just going to get overlooked, and then when it happens, oh no, we lost it. So let me tell you this. Okay. So who's really going to control the perception of these characters after all this is done? Is it an artist? Is it going to be someone like a comic book writer still? I really hope that's the case. But the more negative stuff that could happen is if someone like a thing like Hollywood starts deciding the perception of these characters. A big thing that's been happening towards the years is fandoms have been getting upset that Hollywood or even just TV stations are making these characters coming from anywhere. Say Doctor Who, say Star Trek, to say any superhero in any fictional genre that was popping since forever, and everyone just loves it. But then what happens? They come into the mainstream, and now they have to change for the mainstream so everyone can love it. But, that's the problem. We loved it because we saw certain qualities in these characters. So now changing a character up in a certain way, creatively, is such a big thing. A big example here that I'm going to say is watching the movie Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn did a lot of strange changes to these personal characters. Harley Quinn was changed to a female Deadpool. She's always been kind of funny, but she's never been that much of a fourth wall breaker, right? But it works in some mediums and others it doesn't. This particular film murdered another character who could have potentially had a better first appearance on screen. And it was Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain is such an interesting character because Cassandra Cain comes from the Batman storylines, right? Her father is an assassin who attempts to kill Batman, and they have their tussles and fights and everything. Cassandra Cain joins up with Batman in some points of the story. Newer versions have her she's like Snake Eyes, where she can't speak, but she's a great ninja-esque Batman character, which is super dope on her end. And other versions are different, of course. But she is a great fighter, and her upbringings is like a Damian Wayne before they made Damian Wayne, essentially. Right? Because she wasn't all up in the Bat family all the time. She was always like an outsider who always helped. And I thought she was a great character. But watching that movie with Harley Quinn, she's just a pickpocket who doesn't have the same kind of qualities that in the comics she would have, where she was just this great fighter who was just bam, bam, boom. You know what I'm saying? Like that real good stuff, right? Where, just dropping left kick. I love martial arts, so that's another thing. I like martial artists. So when you change a martial artist into just a thief or a pickpocket, it kind of takes away from my love for them, because you kind of just kill some of the stuff that I love about the character. I digress back to my original point. She was a really great character. Her methods in it was always good. Her relationships with all the Bat family was always an intriguing point of view. And they changed her to fit this narrative of a pickpocket thief hanging out with Harley Quinn. And she ended up being an underling of Harley Quinn to be taught. So, in saying that, when I think of someone such as Harley Quinn, who is very much a character who does do a lot of cool things, she's not really one of those characters that is meant to be a great mentor character. Her on her own is always a great thing because she's chaotic. Massively chaotic. She goes around breaking, killing, destroying. She's a Joker with a conscience in a way. Now, that's not saying she's a great person, but she still has some form of a conscience. So I think that's what she's good at. Now, Birds of Prey didn't do so well, not just because of Cassandra Cain and Harley Quinn, but there was a couple other portrayals that I could use easily, like Huntress is not an awkward character. She's actually a pretty dope character if you get to know her better. She's not this super angry assassin lady who isn't awkward. She's super angry assassin lady, but she's not an awkward human being who doesn't have human contact abilities. She's a part of the Bat family. She knows how to communicate with people very well. She's upper class society. But all that being said, creative control is such a scary thing to have with these characters, and that in the belief that maybe one day that Hollywood could just take what used to be a great thing and kill it. And the biggest thing is if they kill it, and it's going to take a while before we can get back what we used to love. Because, you have to restart it. Things just have to come back slower and slower. If Superheroes movie died 2 weeks ago, I would have said, fine. I have my comics. I have some of the cool, cartoons still. I'm not worried. But now they're making billions and billions, so now Hollywood people are taking away, in my opinion at least, are taking away these characters from the writers who truly love these kind of characters, and instead of just bringing out the character, they're just bringing some stereotype or something that isn't the character. They're bringing a trope or stereotype. And I don't think that's fair. Another big thing that I would have, not just character-wise though, is a source material for these characters. Because the source material does weed out bad stories for future stories that you could tell within another medium, video games and movies, right? So, in storytelling, you always want to bring the best of the best. So movies normally bring the great stories over from comics, and they make the movie from the great stories. Now, it's never a one-to-one, but it's always there, right? You always know what story this is coming from. Now, and that's been a big thing for comic book movies that all these monthly subscription type people want. They want the people, this fan base, to keep on coming and coming so that they know what is there. They know what to grasp to. Because if everything's new, then you're eventually going to get tired of new and you're going to want to adapt to some old stuff. You know what I'm saying? So if we can get to new and old, right? That's the thing. That's the magic of comic books and movies. Comic books create new stuff. Old are the movies that recreate old stories in a new way. But you still recognize it. You still feel like it's what you saw as a comic book fan. A casual fan wouldn't see it, but a comic book fan does. Comic book fan actually sees a lot what's happening. So that's the people who go. And those are the people you want to bring into the theaters. And you're essentially endangering superhero movies by getting rid of comic book movies and potentially giving creative control to what you call more professional writers, because they may or may not be able to keep up with these characters as much as comic book writers do, right? Comic book writers are consistently with these characters. They're consistently crafting these things. Source material is important, people. You gotta have your source material so you have a fan base draw on. And if you don't have a source material, you kind of start losing your fan base, because eventually you've already seen that story. You already heard that story. Look at James Bond. I love James Bond. They have recreated a couple movies already. They're out of source material a while ago. The testifiers. Listen, man. Now, I did go on a little rant there, essentially, about a bunch of stuff there, but mainly continuity and how these characters will be perceived. But there is another side to all these creative endeavors, and it is business side. The business side is what keeps the company afloat. And for a while, DC just hasn't kept up with its finances. And the finances are a great thing and a bad thing. Any company, if you're not focusing enough on your finances, will hurt you. A big thing that they're really taking it back on is anything physical. So that includes collectibles. That includes comic books. They're really just coming out with graphic novels, which a graphic novel for a comic book is simply the first 4 issues of that series, and they release it out. What they're planning to do is they're planning to put single issues online, and you can read them online. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in the future for collectibles, eventually once Corona's out, we will essentially be able to get to the point where we'll get all this stuff back, but in lower quantity, with higher quality. But I think that's what they're really going for. I think they're going for push everything to the internet as much as you can, and if you are able to have everything, a lot of things on the internet and push it right on the internet, then you have less overhead and more profit. Even if you make less money, more overhead just causes more stress on any company or business that you would ever have to deal with. So it's just one of those moments where you're just like, I get it. You need more money, and even if you make less, because comic books and stuff like comic books, they're expensive. It's a niche thing for the most part. A statue could cost $100 and a statue can cost $20. I love the statues, right? The statues are great. And I get not everyone is in love with that kind of stuff. So the finances on that end game is very much a thing where they're just trying to make the thing profitable. So I am in support of that, okay? A lot of these trends also do come from the fact that we're in COVID-19 era. I'm calling this a COVID-19 era. Is where everything's changing at such a breakneck speed that it's really hard to keep up with what's going to work and what's not going to work. So I don't expect any of these real changes to last forever. I'm expecting 1 or 2 changes for sure, don't get me wrong. Like comic books online, single issue, for the most part, yes. But I'm sure if you know comic books, they really like the first issues, because first issues sell collectibles dreams, right? Superman #1, Batman #1. You just look at those and people love those. But overall, I really think that COVID-19 has been the biggest thing to change everything, because everyone is going to maneuver differently when we just can't go outside. So I do think this is good for business, because now the comic book industry has to move forward. It's been back for a while, and they haven't really tried to push because they haven't felt the need to do it, honestly. And it's one of those things. And the thing is, everyone knows superheroes are what you call money. Right now, people love superheroes. So they're just trying to capitalize on this fame they can get now and push into the next phase. And I can't blame a company for trying to do something in that sense. Let passion meet facts. Now, I went on the good side, the bad side, the business side, the creative side. You know, this is just something that is very near and dear to my heart, right? And I understand there's both sides to everything. So I just want to bring it together now. Let's say business is booming, right? Superhero business is great. Everyone loves superheroes. There's a superhero everyone sees on TV. Whether that be an Ant-Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, Thor. There's a million of them, right? So, if we can bring together the entirety, this whole thing, it can really work out, because we're going to the future of comics now. We're not just stuck in the past where things didn't always play out because some old guy in the room didn't like some young guy's new tactic, right? But I think what we're gonna do is bring together the best parts of both. I have my fears and worries, don't get me wrong. My fears and worries that come with this move is very, very much in line with how Hollywood's always maneuvered when it comes to IPs and everything. They don't like sharing because in their eyes, they should be the ones who control most of the media. But, creativity is the most supreme weapon you can ever have. Because no matter what happens, if your idea works with anyone around you, and you can push it towards whoever you need it to be, just follow it. You know what I'm saying? People are always consistently trying to make money off an idea that's working. Make your own ideas. Push it. Like, even if DC goes down this path, this very dark path that I think they might go, we will eventually have our Batman. We will have our Batman, and it will happen. And I'm 100% sure it will happen. Because I have hope that creativity will always win at the end of the day. Money follows people. Let's see what we have now, guys, okay? Now, we have this completed blade. It's a blade with 2 edges, right? A double-edged blade. On one hand, you have a blade that is just so majestic that there's a future for it, right? There's a future for it. The second edge, right? The double-edged sword is Now we are in the era of uncertainty with these characters. And we have seen people try to mess with these characters before. Hollywood goes in, doesn't care about their past or history, and they just want to shape them to fit a narrative that these writers and producers want to fit them in, even if they don't really belong in there. So that is something that I'm really worried about. But I believe that no matter what I say right now, creativity wins the day. People will follow money. Where does the money follow? It follows people, like I said before. Just always focus on what you want. Pay for what you want to see work. If you don't like where an industry is going, you know what? Put your money to the opposite direction. If the opposite direction isn't, if you don't like digital, that's fine. Buy everything physical. And if enough people agree with you, they will do the same. Always vote with your wallets, people. Vote with your wallets against corporations. Corporations will do what they do. If you love anything that I have potentially said is bad or good, that's you. Don't worry about it. Put your mind to it. Because at the end of the day, creativity, stories, they're meant for the people. And eventually, there's a story for everyone. Enjoy the stories you love, and that's the best part. Alright guys, it was a fun podcast. Thanks guys for being here. This is Gmetal. Remember, your humble host and Forge Master. And I'm appreciative of everyone who listens to this podcast. And if you want to follow any of the social medias, it'll be in the description. And I appreciate anyone who does listen. Have a metal day, and be the best person you can be.